Russia is widely suspected of being responsible for jamming the navigation systems of an aircraft carrying EU chief Ursula von der Leyen to Bulgaria 2 days ago. Deutsche Welle correspondent Thomas Sparrow joins us now from Berlin. Thomas, g'day. So what more can you tell us about this interference? And I'm just interested to know, did it get a lot of coverage in Germany and Europe, and was there much alarm there about what happened?
This incident happened as Ursula von der Leyen, so the head of the European Commission, was on a tour of several Eastern European Union member countries, specifically Bulgaria. She was able to land safely in the southern city of Plovdiv. However, both European Union officials and Bulgarian officials specifically stressed that they believed that it was Russian interference that had led to those problems with the GPS system on the aircraft. It has received considerable criticism here in Europe. It is a widely debated issue in the different European Union countries, specifically because it is believed that this is part of what experts describe as Russia's hybrid threats against the European Union. Hybrid threats that may include interference of communication systems, but also damaging underwater cables or cybersecurity threats. And that's specifically why from the European Union, but also, for example, from NATO, there has been a reaction stressing that they will try and counter specifically these kinds of threats that they believe are coming from Russia. Now, Russian officials denied having been involved in this, describing reports of this interference as incorrect. But it is obviously increasing tensions between the European Union and Russia at a time when there's growing interest specifically from the European Union to make sure that some kind of peace negotiations can take place between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, meanwhile, there seems to be controversy in Europe over plans to send troops to Ukraine as security guarantees. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Security guarantees seem to be the key words when it comes to what exactly Europe, and by the way, also the United States, could do if indeed there is a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. In other words, how can Europe, for example, help guarantee that something like the war in Ukraine does not necessarily happen again on Ukraine's territory? And Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, was quoted as saying that precise plans were being drawn up in European capitals for a multinational troop deployment as part of these security guarantees. This was not received very well here in Berlin, here among the German government officials, and specifically Germany's defense minister stressed that it was important to not discuss those kinds of plans publicly before Ukraine and Russia actually sit at the same table to discuss what that peace negotiation could actually be like. And this is in line with Germany's long-standing position that the first step must be a negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, followed by a ceasefire, and then basically everything else. But it is clear that European capitals, European governments are discussing what those security guarantees would look like as part of a peace negotiation. And in fact, on Thursday, there's the next important high-level meeting planned, which is set to include also Volodymyr Zelensky, the president from Ukraine.
And this comes as Vladimir Putin once more blamed the West for the war in Ukraine. What did Putin have to say, and what's been the reaction from Europe?
Those words from Mr. Putin came as he is in China for an international organization, an international meeting with other leaders like the Indian leader, the Chinese leader as well. And he once again reiterated his comment that he believes that the West is behind the war in Ukraine. In other words, that the West's intention to bring Ukraine closer, for example, to the European Union, for example, also to NATO, is what ultimately led Russia to attack Ukraine. So once again, placing the blame on, for example, European capitals, also as well on Ukraine. This is something that was received here in Europe once again with criticism, because the view from Europe is a very different view. European governments believe that the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, the full-scale invasion, was illegal, was against international law, and that Russia is squarely to blame for that invasion, not Ukraine. Whether this might actually have an impact on potential peace negotiations, that is still unclear, but it certainly doesn't bring Russia closer to Ukraine or closer to the West in any way when it comes to trying to find common ground to end the war in Ukraine after more than 3 years.
Okay, Thomas Sparrow there in Berlin. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is flaring up again, firing lava more than 100 metres